Welcome to the Soulful Mind podcast. I'm Angel, and I'm passionate about all things that help us live this perfectly imperfect life with joy and passion. I'm here to share with you a holistic approach to living life. I'm focusing on physical health, spiritual wellness, mental health, relationships, and more. My goal is to take you on a journey of self-discovery. Pull up a seat, get comfortable, grab a notepad, and be prepared to learn how to improve this crazy thing we call life. Let's get started. Welcome. Today, I am so excited to welcome Kim Chestney. She is the author of a brand new book that just came out a couple of days ago called Radical Intuition. She's also a global recognized innovation leader and the founder of Intuition Lab, which is a program that I attended and loved. Her work has been featured or supported by leading-edge organizations, including SXSW Interactive, Carnegie Mellon University, Comcast, and Hewlett-Packard, and she lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with her family. Kim is a mentor of mine and has really helped me get in touch with my intuition, and I am so excited that she took time out of her busy schedule to be here with us today. How are you, Kim?
Hi, Angel. I'm great. It's great to be here with you today.
I'm so excited. Just for the listeners, I have worked with Kim before, and she is amazing. She has a training that I took, as well as this book, which covers a lot of the same things. But do you still do the one-on-one coaching?
Yeah, do all kinds of, working with intuition development, whether it's in groups or one-on-one. It's sort of my passion to help people get in touch with their own intuition.
That's amazing. Well, I really enjoyed our time together, and I really think of you as a mentor. So thank you so much
I
for
enjoy
everything
your
you've
time
done.
too.
Great, good,
Wonderful.
good. So, just to get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about what intuition is?
Yeah, so this new book, Radical Intuition, it's kind of a reimagining of sort of our traditional concepts of intuition. So, and throughout history, we've kind of had different ideas or prejudices against intuition, and it's something woo or something spooky or occult or fringe. But really, and truly, the more that we understand intuition, the more we realize it's really just a complementary form of thinking and processing of information, only instead of getting our information from the three-dimensional world around us and our physical world, we're getting our information from a higher place. So it's really exciting and profound to see it, sort of coming into fruition alongside quantum physics and all of these other things that are really pointing to this extraordinary nature of our reality that intuition is really a part of.
That's great. That's great. And there's a lot of history that goes with intuition. Like I think it was Albert Einstein who basically said that he made a lot of his decisions that way.
Yeah, a lot of people, and that's what people don't realize. Especially people who like talk about like women's intuition and they think it's just something women have, it's a sensitive thing. But really, the biggest, hugest champions for intuition throughout history have actually been men. People like Einstein, Steve Jobs, Tesla. There's been a huge Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda, a huge really swell really over the last 100 years too of people really realizing this connection between genius and intuition, between extraordinary innovation and creativity and genius and intuition, all of that stuff. So there's really kind of this expansion of consciousness that I see happening that I've, is sort of my understanding of it, is that we're evolving in a way. We're growing past our limited thinking minds to really open up to new ways of using our minds. I mean, we know there's so much in our brains, so much that isn't used. There's so much capacity there. And intuition, using our intuition and developing our intuition is really part of opening up that capacity.
Do you have to be like a genius to have intuition, or is it something that everyone has?
Yeah, that's a great question. So every single person, and I couldn't say this enough, every single person that's ever been born or walked on the face of this earth has intuition, has had intuition. It is an integral part of us as human beings. The problem, Angel, is that people have been taught that it doesn't exist, or that if it does exist, it's something that you can't trust, or it's something weird or nebulous. And the reality is we just never took the time to really understand it so that we can way that it should be honored as really the complement to our intellect. The greatest people you look back in history and all around us today, the greatest people are smart. They have smart brains, but they also have really creative, intuitive, ingenious minds. And that's sort of the recipe, the secret sauce of success for people who are out there doing extraordinary things and bringing this transformation and change into the world.
That's great. That's great. So everyone can tap into their intuition. Is there like a level? I mean, do some people have more of a natural way of tapping in, or do they have a way of connecting more, or can you learn all of those things?
Yeah, all of that stuff is, some people are born a little more open to it. It's like a talent or something. Some people are just can naturally play the piano better than other people, just because they're built with a sort of affinity for it. But all people can do it. All people can learn it, and it just takes practice and time and intention. Even the most quote unquote non-intuitive people out there really have this within them if they decide to open their minds to it. And I think that's really part of what we need to do as a society right now is open our minds to the possibilities of intuition, and instead of writing things off as being impossible. Like, there's no way I could know this one thing that happened like on the other side of the world that I'm not connected to at all, without realizing that our whole life transcends time and space. And we understand that with quantum physics now. We didn't understand that 50 years ago or 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago, but now we understand that everything's connected, whether we can see each other or whether we can be next to each other in time and place, or really in space or in time, whether we have proximity, it doesn't matter. All of that data is out there, it all exists, and we can tap into it with a part of our brains that we just haven't been using. So it's time now for this reckoning where we really reconnect with this latent part of our inner power.
This is so amazing because I've always had a connection with what a lot of people call that gut feeling.
Right.
That, if something's wrong, it's not that you're going to feel it in your gut or just have some sort of a gut feeling. And so I've always had that. And then after we talked and had kind of a few meetings, I was able to really transition from second guessing every decision that I was making to really just kind of going with what felt right.
Mm.
Which was a big transformation for me because I am so used to like overthinking everything and spending hours and hours trying to make decisions. And I just kind of started going with, okay, this feels right. And it maybe, things would take me 5 or 10 minutes instead of hours. So yeah,
Yeah,
it
that's
was,
huge. Yeah, and I'm so glad that I was able to facilitate that shift, because just that simple an ability to tune into the way that you feel, and in an instant, like you said, it's easier. You don't have to like toil and weigh the pros and the cons and get a PhD to solve the world's problems. You can just simply open up to this and know it and feel it and sense it, and it's a much easier way to live your life, and it's a much more fluid way to live your life and to get into the flow and the unfolding of your life and its potential, instead of trying to take control of it and steer it. When our life is speaking to us all the time, if we just listen and open up to that rhythm, making these decisions are so much easier. Intuition is really the cure for an analysis paralysis.
yes, I can totally see that. So just kind of going over a few things from your book. I know that you said that there's 4 intuition affinities that you kind of break things down into how is it about how you have or what style you have intuition? Is that kind of what it's about?
Yeah. So I came up with this sort of model because one of the things I struggled with early on when I was working with intuition and trying to help people understand intuition was the many different manifestations that it has. And then they don't get intuition because sometimes it's a gut feeling, sometimes it's a knowing, sometimes it's a sense, sometimes like it's a spiritual experience, and people couldn't really get one comprehensive understanding around it. So there was a lot of misconception and confusion about it. So, I really wanted to look into that and understand, why are these different manifestations? Like, why isn't it one just simple thing that our intuition just talks with us all the same way? But what I discovered was that intuition, as the complement to the mind is very rational and objective, and we can all agree upon all the stuff that the mind is telling us because it's out there in the physical world around us and it's undeniable. And that's part of the reason why that kind of thinking has become so prevalent in our life, because it's so concrete. But intuition, it can give us even deeper, more profound information, but it's truly subjective, which makes sense as the complement to the mind, which is objective. And what I mean by that is it speaks to us in our own unique language. There isn't a formal language out there that you can download from the internet that's the same for everybody with intuition. Part of developing your intuition is understanding your unique way that your intuition speaks to you. And it's really wonderful because you don't have to go and learn some foreign language. You don't have to go to school. You just have to know yourself and spend time with yourself and learn the signs of intuition to know when it's speaking to you and what it's saying. So, part of this language is built by these four different types of intuition. It's all the same intuition. It's all intuition coming from the same source, but it's four different pathways or manifestations and how it connects with us. So, I think we worked with you a lot on physical intuition and how especially if you're a healer, you work in yoga and places like that, you're going to have a real natural affinity to physical intuition because it's how you connect with your body. And people who work with their bodies and they're connected with energetically with their bodies are going to have a real astute sense of this physical intuition. And the model really it echoes the Jungian model of the four cognitive functions of how we process information from this world through our bodies, through our minds, through our hearts, and through our energy, through our spirit, right? So understanding how your intuition talks to you through those four things then ultimately kind of helps you create your own intuitive language that just you and your intuition speak.
That's great. That's great. So, do you want to go over what those four affinities are?
Yeah, sure. So just to give you guys an idea, and there's archetypes that go with it. We're really dealing with the archetype of a healer. If you work with your body, you're a natural intuitive healer. And if you work with mind intuitively, you're the archetype of the sage. If you work with your heart, and I talk about intuition as being your heart, but it's not your emotions. It's your heart, is in your passion and your life's work and your drive and your calling, right? People like that are very visionary and are artists a lot of times. So the archetype with that is the visionary. And then the fourth type of intuition is really this type of intuition that that we hear a lot when people experience truly extraordinary things with metaphysical experiences and union with the divine and these really sublime mystical experiences. And the archetype for that is the mystic. So working with these four archetypes, and I think everybody has a little bit of each of these archetypes within them. Some of these archetypes just we naturally embody them more than others. But as we begin to work with them through, and I go into this a lot in the book, there's a whole chapter and a whole workshop for each archetype in the book. So you can really kind of open up your intuitive pathways, working with the ones that you're really open to. And then the ones that you're not as open to is helping to kind of bring some energy to that. Because ultimately, we want to have all four of those pathways open so our intuition can reach us and communicate with us and share with us in every way possible.
That's amazing. I know you have a test that you can take in the book, and in your trainings as well. And the one that I scored the highest on is the Mystic.
Great.
Which
Nobody
is
ever
interesting.
scores highest on that. That's
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I love that. That makes me happy. I also score the highest on that. But I think I've only met like a couple of people that have had that as the highest. Typically, that's the one. In the lab, at least the people that we work with, typically that's the one that's the lowest. And I think for that is just because I think you have to kind of develop some of your other sensitivities before you get to that point, because it really is the most sublime form of intuitive communication. So I think it's wonderful that you've embodied that, because to me that's the most exciting place, is because that's where these really miraculous things start to happen.
Yeah, I was actually surprised that came up. I think that's different than when I first took the test. I can't remember what it was. I'm sure I have notes somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But the lowest that I got was the Sage, which I thought was interesting as well. And there's like 14-point difference. I mean, it was a lot between the two.
Well, it does change. I mean, and that's something I wanted to point out, in the book too, is this is not like it's not like your astrology chart. Like this isn't a blueprint that is static. This is really sort of a litmus test of where you are at this moment. And when you come into this life, you're going to have natural sensibilities, but as you grow and evolve and change and open and discover, all of that is going to open up. So, hopefully, I hope for folks to take the test, when they start the book, and then maybe take the text a year later, kind of like what you're talking about, or 2 years later, and hopefully you're going to get bigger numbers, and all of them kind of going up in a certain way, and those ratios will change, and at different points in your life, you're going to be more attuned to different types of intuition as well.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it was interesting to go through that and see kind of where I'm at. And you're probably right. It's probably a very different score than what I did when I first started meeting with you. I need to look back through my notes and see what that is.
Yeah, because you would have learned a lot, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it kind of changed how I see things, and how I evaluate things and make decisions, and a whole bunch of stuff. So, yeah, I'm sure it's probably very different.
Yeah, I'd be
So,
interested in knowing how it all came out.
yeah, I'll let you know. Absolutely, I'll let you know. I think my mind or the sage was the lowest then too. So I obviously need to work on that area.
Time and practice. That's
Yes,
all it takes.
yes.
Some time and practice.
So I know that you kind of have a short activity where you can kind of try to make a decision between two things with your intuition. Do you want to kind of walk us through what that would look like?
Yeah, that's the wormhole. That's when we go through the wormhole. Do you want to do a practice round? We can do a practice round together, and
Yeah,
then
that'd be
folks
great.
who are listening can play along. So
Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
awesome. So I think we probably did this in some of our sessions together when we were working one on one. But I love that this is one of the ways to help you get around that analysis paralysis. And I think, when I first started to develop this idea, I was working with a friend who was, she was trying to make a decision about a job offer, and she really just couldn't pick between this new job, which was really great, but she'd have to move and be closer to her family, her parents and stuff, which was good, but she just wasn't sure if she wanted to uproot herself and go through all that change, or getting this promotion at the job she had now and staying where she was. And so both options were, attractive to her, but she couldn't make a decision. So she just came to me one day and she's crying. She's like, Kim, like, I can't, you have to help me. My intuition is failing me. I can't make a decision. And I said, well, your intuition isn't failing you. I said, you're just not using it. So let's try something. And so we did this exercise that I now call going through the wormhole, because it allows us to get an answer or make a choice without making pros and cons lists and going through all those steps from A to Z, right? You just go directly from A to Z. You don't have to go through the whole alphabet in between. Um, so to do this is a visualization exercise, and I had her pick an image for each for each choice. So for the one choice, she picked an image to visualize in her mind's eye of a tree that grew in the area where she lived now, and that would represent staying with this job. And then she picked the image for a tree that looked like where she was going to move, to represent the new job. So I told her, I said, look, so just close your eyes and envision, both of these sort of images in your mind's eye, and see what they do. How do they talk to you? What do they do? How do they interact with you? How do they speak to you intuitively? What kind of metaphor do they tell you, so that you can really understand on a higher level, what the universe is asking of you and what life is asking of you in this moment? And she took a second, she paused, and she immediately had an answer. Like, it didn't take long at all. And she said, yeah, she's like, well, I know what I need to do. And she's like, I said, what happened? And she said, well, one tree grew really, really big, and the other one just shriveled up and died. And I said, well, which
So
one grew?
interesting.
Yeah, right. And I said,
Yeah.
so, well, which one was it? Which one grew really big? And she said, the choice I didn't want to make. Right. And
Yeah.
which to me immediately spoke of why we have analysis paralysis, because we get into these moments of analysis paralysis so often when our intuition is telling us to do something we don't want to do. like it's like, or like even that we have resistance to, or that we're afraid of. Like she didn't really want to go through all that trouble and get outside her comfort zone and do all that stuff. Like part of her just wanted to just stay where she was, and it was the easier choice to stay where she was. But a part of her always knew that she had to do that other thing, even though her mind was just kept trying to talk her into this wrong path. So ultimately, the next day she went in and gave her notice, and she moved, and she's so happy. And she's always tells me all the time, she's like, I'm so glad that I made that choice. And I was able to do that because it was the right choice, and it really freed me. So we can do it right now. Like, if there's something that you're thinking of, or a choice that you have to make in your life, you just kind of create two symbols in your head for those choices, and then just allow them to speak to you in your mind's eye. And that process, that symbolic metaphorical process of interacting with them, is a form of intuitive communication.
That's amazing, because I'm such a visual person. I don't know if that makes a difference, but for me, I can't remember what decisions I was making at the time, but I had two visuals, and one vision just started kind of coming closer to me and moving, and one started moving farther away. So it's like, okay, well, that one is obviously, the better direction is the one that's moving closer to me.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely. So I would encourage, anyone, and like you said, it's a really short process to kind of try that out between two decisions and see, what kind of comes to them.
Yeah.
Now, one of the challenges I think that I had early on, and still I think it's kind of hard to tell the difference, is sometimes your thinking mind gets in the way. So how do you know if it's your thinking mind, or that's there, it's your mind, not your intuition? How do you know the difference?
Yeah, that is a really good question, Angel. That's like one of the most important questions when you're doing this intuitive work to really get a hold of. And in the book, I have that checklist of like qualities of a genuine intuition, right? And it has like a list so that you can kind of like, okay, this, and there's a whole bunch of things that differentiate intuition from like our thoughts or our feelings or our wishes or fears. All of those things, they say, oh, listen to that voice in your head. Well, we've got a lot of voices in our head. That's the reality. We have to listen to the true voice in our head and the higher voice in our head. That's the trick. So, so part of that is really understanding, just a couple of basic things to start is that, one of the key things that really helped me to understand is that intuition is something, it's an impression, a thought, a feeling that simply arrives. You don't create it, you don't cook it up, you don't think it up. If you're in the process of thinking, then you have to really step back and say, okay, like, is this the process of insight at work, or is this my mind? If you're walking down the street and all of a sudden something hits you out of nowhere, there's a good chance that's your intuition, because your intuition can really like get in when you're not in a place of thinking. You kind of have to shut your mind off to let your intuition in. So it's really, if you're going for walks or drives or meditating, all those places, being in the shower, really good times to get those pops of insight. So first of all, just knowing that we don't create our intuitions are given to us. They're downloaded, they just arrive. So to be really mindful of any kind of insights that you get that simply arrive. And then the second thing is that intuition is that voice of still, quiet knowing. So if you are feeling excited or emotional or fearful or any kind of situation of emotional static, then you have to really question whether or not it's really intuition, because intuition and emotions and overthinking, all those stuff, they don't jive at all. Intuition comes from that calm, quiet place of knowing. So it's truth. Truth stands on its own. Truth speaks for itself. It doesn't make you happy. It doesn't make you sad. Those are your egoic reactions to the truth. So you have to be careful with feelings. It's great. Everyone loves it when their intuition tells them something they want to hear, so it's okay. So if you're feeling good about it, it's okay to feel good about it. But we have to be really careful that we're not conflating our wishes with our intuitions, or conversely, our fears. A lot of people get afraid, and they're like, oh, the classic case scenario that I've heard over and over again is people be like, I just have a really bad feeling that something horrible is going to happen today. And they'll get into this state of mind where they get themselves all worked up and won't leave the house because they think they get into this, fear mode. And, what I tell them is like, intuition's never going to make you feel that way. Real solid intuition, even if it delivers something like, if you're not supposed to get in the car because there's a car accident ahead or something, you're just going to have a knowing, or you're just going to have a sense to pull over, get off the road, or just don't go, or something will pop up to keep you from going. It won't get you in a fearful headspace. If you have anxiety and experiences like that around, that's the mind. That's the handiwork of the mind. The mind creates fear.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? The mind creates
Yeah.
anxiety. So
That's interesting. I never really thought about that, that the anxiety is not your intuition talking, it's the mind.
yeah, it's
Wow.
intuition is the antithesis of anxiety in the mind, right? Because it's the calm, it's the still, it's the knowing, it's the truth. And there's no place for anxiety or fear or any kind of disruption like that emotionally with the intuitive experience.
So, like you said, walks are a good place to kind of get those.
Yeah.
So you try to get your mind clear. It sounds like meditation. It sounds like it's another great
Yeah.
place.
Yeah, so I talk a lot about, mindfulness is really popular in the world. And, over the last 20, 30 years, this movement of mindfulness has been so beneficial for us, especially as a counterpoint to all of the technology and like busy, busy lives that we're living. We really need this mindfulness now more than ever. And it's so wonderful because mindfulness is really what sets the stage for what I call practice of insightfulness. So if you want to live by your intuition every day at all moments, as we should, we have to be mindful first. We have to get into that place where we take some time out from the din, we take some time out from the chaos, and open up space for our intuition to speak to us. If we're busy on our phones, checking things, working 24 hours a day, running around like chickens with our heads cut off, we're not going to be able to hear our intuition. Our lives are so noisy. We can't even hear what our intuition's trying to say. So getting into that presence and stillness, whether you're meditating or going for walks or just spending some time introspecting or writing or listening to music, all these things that are just really, self-care practices that allow us to
Hmm.
nurture our inner being. That's what cultivates the space where intuition can start to speak to us.
That's amazing because I think so much of us, or all of us, are so into constantly staying busy and constantly being in that rushing from one thing to another mindset. And yeah, it doesn't allow a lot of information to come through. And then we get so overwhelmed because, we are constantly rushing and trying to make decisions, but we're not able to really connect with ourselves in order to get those answers that would come naturally.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, one more question for you.
Yeah.
Is intuition ever wrong?
That's my favorite question. I'm so glad that you asked that. I love that question because the answer is no, intuition is never wrong. And that is a big surprise to a lot of people because a lot of people, they come to me like, my intuition was totally wrong. Like, I was so sure that this was the, and I was totally wrong. And I try to help people to understand that so intuition is by nature truth. By its very nature is truth. It is impossible for it to be wrong. So what's wrong? We're wrong. We
Right?
we
Whoever's listening.
misinterpret it. Yeah, we didn't
Yeah.
hear it. We misinterpreted it. We confused it with our feelings or emotions, right? Or even, and this is a thing that happens sometimes our intuition wants us to do things that may not work out to help teach us things that we can't even see. So our, say for example, your intuition is telling you to like get out of, you say you're on a boat, you're going down the stream, and like, your intuition's telling you to get out of the water and it's time to go home. I'm like, well, you're like, okay, I'm just going to follow my intuition. So you get out of the water, you're going down the stream, time to go home, and you're walking home, and you're like, you get lost and you get like sticks in your feet and bug bites and you're really miserable. You're like, oh, I was totally wrong. I should not have listened to my intuition. But meanwhile, you don't know that right around the corner where you got off that boat was like a waterfall and you were going to die. You know what I mean? So
Right.
so there's that view that like intuition has this 360 view that you can't see everything. And even though things don't always turn out the way we want, we may have been redirected from a worse failure, or you might be down walking through the woods and bump into like your soulmate and you don't even know it. You know what I mean? Like, so there's so much of this orchestrated plan of life that's beyond our vision, that intuition has the vision of. So we just have to get into a space of trust. And I know it can kind of sound like, oh, it's like pie in the sky and it's so nebulous, but it really isn't. Once you actually start to build that relationship of trust in your life, you will experience those doors opening, and you will go get more and more aligned with it and understand why these things happen. It becomes clearer and clearer. So you're like, yeah, like I know that I can trust it, no matter what. And it's a wonderful feeling when you get into that place, because that's when the alignment with your highest path and your highest potential all kind of starts to fall into place.
Okay, so the name of the book is Radical Intuition. Where can people find it?
Yeah, so you can get the book literally anywhere online, in your bookstore, at my website, kimchestney.com. And also at my website, I have a free book on my website, a mini book called Wake Up Your Intuition Guide, which is a good sort of primer that you can check out right now to just start, getting those intuitive juices flowing, and really learning like the basics of this radical intuition idea. And then, as we have classes, coachings, all kind of cool intuitive development stuff at our online school, Intuition Lab.
Great, which is amazing, and like I said, you're amazing, and I really enjoyed everything that you've done for me and that I've learned, and I just can't encourage people enough to reach out to you. The book is also available as a digital download, I assume.
Yes, you can get it on Kindle.
Perfect, so you can get it right away.
Yeah.
And where can people find you? Are you on social media?
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook. I'm pretty much out there everywhere, and yeah, so you can't miss me.
Okay, and that's Kim Chestney Kim Chestney on Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, Kim Chestney on Instagram, and just regular Kim Chestney, Chestney. There's a silent T in there, so make sure you get that.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming. I know you're busy with launching your book. I appreciate all of your time and sharing everything with our listeners. I'm sure that it is definitely a good piece of advice, and getting the book will just kind of bring everything full circle. It has so much more information in it than what we even went over. We just kind of scratched the surface.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that was great. It's been a great conversation, and I'm just looking forward to what's next, and I'm just happy to have a chance to get to know you and share all the stuff with your folks. So
Great.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
All right, bye-bye. Thank you for joining us. If you like this podcast, you can receive our free gift, 5 5-minute meditations to kick off your meditation practice. You can receive them at angelevenger.com/meditations. Link is in the show notes. We would also love to have a review from you. We read each one, and it helps us with the show and makes us more visible. You can follow me on Instagram at angelevenger. And remember, you are the only one who can make your life great. Grab it by the horns and let's go. See you next week. Lots of love.